the 6 teams that have qualified for the AFC bracket probably don't want to see, and that's the Cincinnati Bengals. All right, welcome in. It's the Breer Report for January the 3rd, our first Friday Breer Report of 2025. Happy New Year, everybody. And our first topic for this week will be looking at the landscape in the AFC, the NFC, what the playoff picture looks like. The NFC, it's fairly simple. It's 6 teams in. There's still some jockeying for seeding, but either Tampa or Atlanta will have the 7th spot in the NFC playoff picture. And right now, Tampa is the team that controls its own destiny. The Buccaneers play the Saints this weekend. The Falcons play the Panthers. On paper, those look like wins for the favorites. So in that case, Tampa would go. It's pretty simple, cut and dry. And for the Buccaneers, this would be big. That's 4 division titles in a row if they win on Sunday. And 2 division titles in a row post Tom Brady. Pretty remarkable 5-year run if you think about it, because those 4 division titles were, of course, preceded by a wild card year in which the Buccaneers won the whole thing. So it's great credit to everybody there. Of course, in Atlanta, Raheem Morris getting his program off the ground. Obviously, there are questions about the handling of the end of the Commanders game on Sunday, but I'd say everything's going in a positive direction right now in Atlanta. And while they've got the Kirk Cousins thing to deal with, looking at Michael Penix, where he's been through a couple of weeks and where he could be going in 2025, there's a lot of reasons to look upon the Falcons' future under Raheem Morris with optimism, regardless of whether or not they win on Sunday. Now, with that taken care of, the AFC picture obviously is a little bit more complex. There's one team that's in a win and in spot. That's the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton in his second year, rookie quarterback Bo Nix. They've done a great job there. And the other 2 teams that are still alive, the Miami Dolphins, who play the Jets, and then the Bengals, who play on Saturday against the Steelers. And this is where the AFC picture is a little complex. You have 3 of the divisions already locked up. Miami Kansas City will be the number 1 seed. They've won the AFC West. Buffalo will be the number 2 seed. They've won the AFC East. And Houston will be the number 4 seed, and they've won the NFC South. That leaves, of course, the AFC North, which is tied into how everything will happen with the last playoff spot. Let's get to that last playoff spot first. Again, Denver is winning in, and they're in a unique situation here because they're going to be playing Kansas City, which normally would be one of the worst draws you could possibly have in a win and in spot, but the Chiefs aren't playing for anything. Andy Reid's already said Carson Wentz is going to start. Now, here's the thing about that, right? Andy Reid's typically been able to get more out of backup quarterbacks, get more out of reclamation project quarterbacks. So I don't think this is like a lay down and die situation for the Chiefs with Carson Wentz in there. I think they can still win a football game with Carson Wentz in there. The other thing is, yes, some of the stars will be rested. Chris Jones, Travis Kelce, who need the extra time to be themselves in the playoffs. But an NFL roster only has 53 guys on it. You can only sit down so many people. This isn't the preseason when you've got 90 guys. This isn't a college roster that has 100 guys on it. So I think the Chiefs are going to be very judicious about who they use and who they put out there. But football's not a game you can play at half speed. And the rosters are as such, again, where you really can't sit that many people. So I think if Denver's on its A game, Denver wins. If Denver brings a little bit less than that, then we could be talking about something else. If the Broncos lose, then that opens the door for the Dolphins. The Dolphins play the Jets. Tua's health is still obviously a big question here. And I look at the Jets as one of these teams. Obviously, effort's been a question over the course of the last few weeks. It didn't look great against Buffalo on Sunday, but with teams like the Jets, you often get them in these spots at the end of the year where you see a little bit of a bounce. And one of the reasons why most rosters are made up of guys with uncertain futures. Huge percentages of the roster, guys have uncertain futures. So a lot of these guys who are going to be taking the field for the Jets on Sunday will be playing to put one last thing on their resume before they go out and try to find a job for 2025. And that's only amplified by the fact that the guys who are in the Jets building right now don't know who the GM is going to be next year, don't know who the head coach is going to be next year. And so, again, I think if Miami plays the same game, if Tua is in there, Miami probably wins. But I mean, if they slip a little, I think Aaron Rodgers and the Jets could win that game? Absolutely, they could. Which brings us to the team that the 6 teams that have qualified for the AFC bracket probably don't want to see, and that's the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals would need the Broncos to lose. They would need the Dolphins to lose. If those two things happen, then they can slide in and become the 7 seed, which would create a Buffalo-Cincinnati matchup in the first round of the playoffs. And then if the Bengals found a way to upset the Bills, then the Chiefs would see them in the first round, which could win the second round, which could motivate the Chiefs to want to maybe creatively manage that game against the Broncos. The Bengals, I think, of the three, are clearly the most dangerous. Joe Burrow is playing at such a high level. That offense is at Mach speed right now, at Mach 5 speed. Is that right? Mach 5? I think that might be the right term. They're flying with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase having a historic year, closing in on the Triple Crown. T. Higgins has come around the home stretch at really, really strong. That group and the defense is starting to play a little bit better, and certainly got some key stops down the stretch in that Saturday night game against the Broncos. So the Bengals sit there as the team that I don't think anybody wants to face. Now, here's the other thing that's interesting is that AFC North situation is going to play out there on Saturday night. So you got the Ravens playing the Browns in the early game. If the Ravens win, then the Ravens wrap up the AFC North. The Steelers then are playing for seeding, but it's not as high leverage a game for the Steelers. Whereas if the Ravens lose in the first game, now the Steelers have everything to play for because they can win the AFC North. They can get a playoff home game. So again, I don't think the Ravens are going to lose to the Browns, especially with the way the Browns have managed the last few weeks. I'm not going to use the word tanking, but they've been creative about their draft position, I think. So you have that situation there that's going to affect what happens in the late game. Again, a lot of these things intertwine with one another. Very, very interesting across the AFC playoff picture, how some of these things could play out with so much already determined. Again, 6 of those playoff spots, same thing in the NFC, are already locked up. And that brings us to our second topic, which one thing that's going to obviously have a massive impact on what happens in January is, the rest of January at least, is what happens on Sunday night at Ford Field between the Vikings and the Lions. The Lions come in at 14-2. The Vikings come in at 14-2. The Lions are still beat up on defense. The offense is still playing at a very, very high level. The Vikings seem to just keep climbing and have kept playing better every week, and they've gotten better every week. And Sam Darnold has continued to get better. And if you look, like, it's so impressive what they've done defensively, losing to Neil Hunter, but they've got 2 Pro Bowlers on the edges and veteran players. Jonathan Grenardi, the guy from Houston, Andrew Van Ginkel, who came from Miami, who was a Brian Flores player in Miami. And they add also Dallas Turner as a first rounder there. You got to be so impressed by the Vikings operation overall. So we're getting that on Sunday night. These two teams going head to head. And here's the stakes. The stakes really at this point are, you've got one team that's going to be the 1 seed that's going to get next weekend off, that's going to have a chance, that's going to come out of this game 1 win away, 1 home win away from the NFC title game. The other team is going to have to go on the road in the first round of the playoffs and play either, now I believe I'm right about this, the Rams, the Bucks, or the Falcons. And it could wind up being the Rams if the Rams do rest some people, which is expected. You see, we're expecting to see Jimmy Garoppolo this week. So if the Rams wind up losing, the Buccaneers win, then you could wind up with the Rams in the first round, which isn't an easy draw if you're the loser of that Vikings-Lions game. So huge implications. And I think for the Lions, maybe even more so. Now, that sounds counterintuitive because the Lions have so much, have a lot of playoff experience at this point, having gone through what they went through last year. But the Lions could really use the extra week to get healthy, to get some guys back on the field. Maybe they get Alex Anzalone back, David Montgomery coming off of the knee. Based on where they are from a health standpoint, it may be even more important to the home team here, the Lions, than it is to the Vikings, who have been relatively healthy all year long. So can't wait for that one. That's a huge one. And I know everybody's going to be dialed in at 8:25 on Sunday night there on NBC. Finally, our third topic, coaching carousel, is obviously a big topic in a lot of places that I didn't just cover and talking about the playoff picture. So I want to give you guys a quick rundown of where everything is at. Obviously, the Jets have begun their interview process. They've interviewed Ron Rivera. Mike Vrabel's there today. Vrabel got the blessing of the Browns to go and look for jobs a week early. They tweaked his contract a few weeks ago to create an earlier end date that would allow for him to do this. I think there was a great relationship there between the Browns and Vrabel. It's reflected in having that agreement at the very end to take care of Vrabel and let him get a head start. So he's with the Jets today. They've interviewed a number of GM candidates as well: John Robinson, Thomas Dimitroff, Jim Nagy. Their process will continue. I think they're as much of a blank slate as any team is going to be. They brought in Mike Tannenbaum and Rick Spielman from the outside, and I think the way they're going to handle this going forward, they're going to interview GM candidates. They're going to interview head coaching candidates. They're going to find whoever they think is best, and they're going to build around that person. So if it's a GM, that GM will help pick the head coach. If it's a head coach, that head coach will help pick the GM. I think that's what they offer the next person. I think they're at the point now where they're going to give that person the chance to build it out the way he sees fit. Then you have the Saints already out there. The Saints, again, the word on the street is they're going to lean towards experience. Connections in the building will help. Two names that really stand out in that regard. Aaron Glenn, who coached there and knows everyone in the building, or most of the people in the building, still really well. And then Mike McCarthy, whose contract is up with the Cowboys, and I think could wind up being a candidate there. Joe Brady's a younger guy, less experienced, who has connections in the building. I think Vrabel is somebody they'd want to talk to as well. You hear Vrabel's name a lot. I will say it again in the Bears situation. We've been over this a million times now. The Bears do have a list of candidates, and they're still going through their vetting process. They put Ryan Poles in the position to run point in the search. Obviously, Kevin Warren and the McCaskies are going to have a say in the way this goes. I would put Vrabel in that leader of men category, which is sort of where they started their process. Aaron Glenn is in that category as well for them. I think as they've gone along, as the season's played out, I think it's clear if it's not a quarterback's guy who's getting the job, that they're going to want somebody who has a clear plan for the quarterback. Some guys that have connections already there: Brian Flores, college teammate of Ryan Poles. He obviously works in Minnesota, and that's a place Kevin Warren spent 15 years. And the reviews they've gotten back from the Vikings on Flores have been really good. Flores, of course, is going to have a quarterback plan. Cliff Kingsbury's another one connected to the quarterback there. He and Caleb Williams went through their ups and downs in 2023 at USC. It was a tough year for Williams, but they came out the other side of it with a pretty solid relationship. I think Cliff's going to be picky about his next landing spot. But my feeling is that the Bears would be one that he would take a hard look at. I think at least interview there. Ben Johnson's a name that's been I discussed a ton in Chicago. I think this was a year ago. We would be talking about Ben really maybe being the guy there. I think some of the experiences that Ben Johnson's been through the last couple of years have informed him in his process. So I don't think it's a slam dunk that he would just wind up going there. I think he'll take the interview, but I think he's going to be looking for alignment with the general manager, Ryan Poles. Jeff King is a guy who works there. I know he's got a relationship with. And then does ownership see its mistakes and are they willing to fix their mistakes? And then, I think Thomas Brown will get a look. Obviously hasn't looked good the last few weeks, but they respect what he was up against there. So that's the Bears. Those are the three that are open. The Jacksonville job, I think, will come open. The Jaguars have been very quiet. They haven't been sniffing around or doing much investigating or talking to many of the people that are involved in these things. But I do expect change there. And, I think in all likelihood, sweeping change, where they'll be looking for a general manager. They'll be looking for a new head coach. That could wind up being the Ben Johnson team. Dallas is another one. Again, I think if McCarthy had more term on his deal, there's a good chance they bring him back. He's up. His entire coaching staff is up. They'd have to draw up new contracts for everybody. They're another team I think Vrabel could be a candidate for if they have an opening. I think this one Vrabel would have an interest in. The Raiders. Again, what happens with Antonio Pierce, we'll see. Could it be a full reboot? We'll see. What's Tom Brady's voice there? We'll see. I don't think Brady's going to be a day-to-day guy at this point in the building, but Mark Davis will listen to him. And I think the Brady connection does put Vrabel in play there. That's one connection we've heard made quite a bit. And then a couple that I think are still up in the air: the Giants, the Patriots. The Giants, I would say, a lot's going to depend on the plan that Joe Shane and Brian Daboll present to John Mara for a way out of this, and their plan for the quarterback position. I don't think Mara wants to make changes, but this is the position that he's been put in, where it hasn't looked good all year. The stadium has been dead for a month or two now. You've got all the outside noise that comes with being in New York. So think, like they're going to be looking at a detailed plan. They could be another Vrabel team. And of course, New England could be too. Vrabel is going to be a popular name out there over the next couple of weeks. I think the Patriots, again, like the Maras, do not want to walk away from Gerard Mayo after a year, but it's looked really bad. And they've had a couple of really tough afternoons against the Chargers and Cardinals over the last few weeks that I think have raised some bigger questions there. I think, for Mayo, he's going to be judged on, are his players still playing hard for him? Do you see his ability to manage a staff? And has he built a program where you can see that light at the end of the tunnel? I think those are the questions that the Crafts are going to be asking themselves over the next few days as we lead into decision time, which for all of these teams is early next week, which we'll keep you posted on all of that. Of course, come check out everything on the website. We got a ton of stuff going up over the weekend at themmqb.com. And be back here for another Breer Report on Tuesday. We'll be wrapping up Week 18, looking forward to the playoffs, and, of course, updating you on everything that goes down on Black Monday. We'll see you guys then.